far.
Good. I'd like to call the July Electoral Area Services Committee meeting to order, and I will give a very abbreviated chair's report on the Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting because I forgot to take notes. We did talk about the need for lifeguards in pools throughout the FERD and the program that's in place to allow for people to get training to become lifeguards, to try and find a way of getting that program moving forward. We had a very nice quarterly report from staff on things that were taking place in the Fraser Valley Regional District. We talked about the need for composting and waste separation in the regional district and how that program is moving forward. And I think that's about all I can remember in summary from our RACS meeting this morning. So with that, I will turn things over to our CAO.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. So looking for approval of the agenda and late items.
Motion, move Director Dixon, second Director Bales. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Item 4.1, we have a delegation on the upcoming development application at 43837 Lougheed Highway, Lake Eric, and that is Applin Martin and Giesbrecht and Company presenting.
Good, welcome, folks. Mr. Baker.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, directors, chairman, and Fraser Valley regional staff. Thank you for allowing us to speak today about the proposed Harrison Rise project, also known as Lake Eric Gravel Pit. My name is Andrew Baker. I work for Applin Martin, and I'm a representative for this project. I will be referring to the project as Harrison Rise since we have adopted this name for the proposed project. I am joined today by Samira, the project planner from Applin Martin, Joey Chapman, councillor for Scalowitz First Nation, Patrick and Ben from Giesbrecht and Company, who are responsible for public outreach, and Dave Vernon from Fraser Valley Aggregates, the owner of the gravel pit. Just go back quickly. I've put a little agenda there. I'm going to try to cover those topics in my 10 minutes to give you an overview of this project. And hopefully I can get it within the 10 minutes. So I know this, the Fraser Valley Regional District is a big area, so I thought I'd take a moment and just explain where this is for members who are maybe not totally familiar. The site is located on the Lougheed Highway between DeRoche and Harrison Mills. Lake Iraq is across the Lougheed Highway and the CP rail tracks from the site. Harrison Rise is southwest of Scalowitz First Nation there. That's the purplish bluish. I guess I'm a bit colorblind. Lacamo First Nation are to the south. That's the big blue area. Just worthy of mention for people who are not familiar with that site is it does rise steeply up and that there's a plateau up in the top part of the gravel pit. This is not necessary that you read it, but it's just an excerpt from an approval back in 2016 for the soil removal permit and the temporary use permit. So a bit of background, maybe not necessary for everybody, but for some it is. The gravel pit has been in operation since the early 1970s, but more recently in 2014, the gravel pit was proposed to be expanded. The expansion involved a public process for a soil removal permit and temporary use permit. This was approved in 2016 by the board and the directors. The commitment in that soil removal permit was to downsize the mining operation, so the gravel removal was over in 6 years rather than a 20-year mining process. In addition, the gravel was to be mined such that the remaining shape would support a residential project. Fraser Valley Aggregates have completed this commitment and the mining of them using the mining operation as promised in the soil removal permit. So as mentioned, this excerpt from the report in 2016 Basically, it summarizes the project at this time. And the objectives have completed. We're working on preparing a housing application, and we are ready to submit an application to the Fraser Valley Regional District. So our application is based on housing needs information, consultation with Scalowitz First Nation and the general community of Electoral Area C, planning principles, technical studies to confirm the viability of the project. So we did take the time to read over the housing needs report for Electoral Area C. We also commissioned our own report by Deloitte to take a look at the area. We reviewed the Aboriginal Housing Management Association's Indigenous Housing Strategy. And then more recently, we read over the Canadian Mortgage and Housing, their study that was completed for basically all of Canada. Excuse me a second here, get a drink of water. All of these studies confirm that housing is needed in the area. In particular, First Nations are in need of more housing as they have many residents who would like to relocate back to the area, but there are not many affordable options in the area. Electoral areas C housing needs are summarized in their report as affordable housing needs, rental housing, special needs housing, housing for seniors, housing for families, shelter for people experiencing homelessness. So the proposed Harrison Rise project could be part of the solution for housing in Electoral Area C. So our public consultation to date, one of our first priorities was to reach out to the local First Nation community. We have consulted with Scalowitz First Nation as our main contact to the First Nation community over the last 2 years to understand their community history in the area and work with them on shaping this proposed project on their ancestral lands. We have gained their support and we've agreed to work with them towards connection of the community to the proposed wastewater treatment plant, ensuring an opportunities for employment during the project. We did meet with their chief and council. We met with their elders. So as far as the consulting with the rest of Electoral Area C, we have done an extensive outreach proposal over the last few years. We've held a virtual meeting in 2021, and we have held 3 public meetings in 2022. Each one of those meetings, the Fraser Valley Regional District staff mailed out in excess of, I think, 300 letters to everybody to invite them out. We maintained a website where all our presented information can be found. So our meetings in 2022 were in April and in June. In the April meetings, we had about 20 households attend the 2 sessions. And in June, we had about 37 households attend. We are not aware of any significant opposition to the project, and it would appear that most people would be happy to see the closure of the pit. We did learn some interesting things during the public process. I'm just going to mention a couple of them, time limiting here. Scalowitz First Nation wastewater treatment plant is no longer in operation. In fact, they've dismantled it, and their village now discharges effluent to a septic field, which wasn't designed for that. The septic field is uphill of their new daycare. I think this is probably common knowledge, but worth mentioning. Housing around Lake Iraq rely on septic systems that do not function to current standards due to high water table. Fraser Health Authority, they sample the lake on a regular basis, and the tests show high fecal counts in the summertime and fecal counts throughout the rest of the year. Our project can provide a solution for this problem. So these are our planning principles, which Samira, who's with me here today, she's a planner. This is what guided them in their work throughout the public consultation process. It's worth noting them quickly. You know, one of our goals is improving community services as part of this project, and enhancing housing diversity, providing local amenities, introducing employment opportunities, protecting the natural environment, maintaining Indigenous culture. We also, to ensure our application is technically feasible, and that we can build what we are proposing, we have completed extensive technical studies and commissioned field exploratory work. An example is we have actually drilled our 2 wells and tested them to ensure we have capacity. We've done extensive field testing to ensure that our wastewater treatment plant and the rapid infiltration basin would be able to work. And this slide here lists all the other things that we've completed for this project and over the last 2-year period, and the list of companies that we've have engaged, including ourselves. So the benefits of this project, obviously with this project moving ahead, the gravel pit would be closed eventually and shut down, and there would be something else there. We're going to bring some much needed sanitary infrastructure to the area in the form of a wastewater treatment plant, which will work with Fraser Valley Region District to figure out how we can connect the Scalawat's First Nation. And then eventually one day Lake Rock residential community could connect into that wastewater treatment plant also. We're providing housing diversity to the area, trails and parks, reconciliation, and then there's jobs that will come out of this. This is a significant project, obviously. Now I'll show you what we're thinking here as far as a concept. This is a subdivision concept using color and other things to indicate the various uses. It probably warrants a much more detailed analysis than what I'm going to give you. But in general, the proposed Harrison Rise project is primarily residential housing, and we've got a little bit of employment lands down in the very bottom corner there, the purplish one. The residential housing consists of single family lots of various size, 1 townhouse site, and 1 multi-family site there at the corner of Bordery Road and the Lougheed Highway. We also propose to allow rental suites in the single family houses, which is predominantly what this site is, with the idea of possibly some coach homes on some of the larger lots. The actual statistics for that plan there is 150 lots, 6 lots, varying from 500 to 700 buildable square meters, so 5,000 to 7,000 square feet. Some of the lots are bigger, but you can't build on them because of the slopes. 1 townhouse that we think would yield about 60 to 70 units, depending on, the designs, and 1 apartment site, which would probably yield about 60 units, and would have to be maxed out at 3 stories high because of your fire department restrictions. So that's a little bit of information there about the actual proposal. There's lots of details in there that I can go over if there's questions. This, the slide on the left is an air photo image of the current mining operation and inserted into a rendering for the area. So you can see, and everybody who's driven by there is fully aware of what it looks like. It is a big pit. It is quite visible from many different angles in the valley. And then the drawing on the right is our artist rendition of what this project would look like when it's being completed. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of sloped areas. Most of the housing is up at the top of the hill. And our 1 main road up there as well, you'll probably be able to see some housing going up the road into the actual main part of the project. So that is my presentation on the project. I thank you for the opportunity to present this information. We hope that one day it makes it to your board and that we can get approval for this project. And we're here, and the rest of the team is here to answer any questions you may have.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Directors, any questions of Mr. Baker or his team? Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Baker, for your presentation. I'm just curious with the map, because I didn't quite catch how close is the First Nations Reserve. That's it was probably on the map, but I couldn't read which one it was.
Oh, you're talking about Scalawat's First Nation?
Yes.
They're I would guess probably physical properties are less than a kilometer apart if you go
Okay.
from the corners.
And that's the one that you're hoping to use a sewer system to attach to them as well?
We're hoping to decommission, in cooperation with INAC, decommission their wastewater treatment plant. And instead of them pumping to their wastewater treatment, they would pump to our wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
So that's the idea. And then they not only, they gain back the space where the wastewater treatment plant is, but more importantly, they gain back the septic field that they will no longer need,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is prime land for them to build housing on.
And then for me, one more. just follow up.
Absolutely.
Is the intention then that if all this goes through and down the road, is the wastewater treatment plant owned by you or your company or FVRD?
The preliminary discussions with Fraser Valley Regional District staff engineering department is that they would take ownership of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Stobart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Always interested in that property that many, many years ago belonged to my in-laws when it was a very tiny gravel pit. So it's interesting to see things moving forward. I see that we've got Joey here from Skelet's Council today, and understand that there has been some sort of agreement or partnership worked out. And I'm just wondering from Skelet's point of view, why would you support the project?
Is it okay if I have Joey come up?
Certainly.
Nervous.
Welcome. No,
Thank you.
absolutely no reason to be nervous around us. So.
Yeah. Halath, Tloskwi, Tolikalaska. I just really want to thank everybody for being here today and to hear our point of view on why we support. You know, you talk about reconciliation, you can see how far we are behind with our wastewater treatment plant. It's been there since the 80s. It goes uphill. It's pretty much done. Our water system, there's just so much to go with it. And you know how we're all about our land. We're the people of the land. We love our environment. And you talk about Lake Yurok. If you did some studies around our area and you go to Lake Yurok and you see where that lake leads, we had a spawning channel there. And there's not any fish that go through there anymore. When I was a little boy, we used to go watch the fish come up and spawn. But you look at our environment now, because of what's happening in our waters, that a lot of our environmental stuff are dying. And our elders are in support because of the cleanup that we can do, how this can set us forward so many years from being so far back. And what the comment Andrew said about housing, you know, so many of our people, not just our people, but a lot of people are suffering out there with everything that just went up. And you're talking about low income housing. I'm not talking about just our people, I'm talking about everybody. You know, we've had people in our campground that were non-First Nations because they couldn't afford a place to live. So we took them in and looked after them. And, you know, it's just such a struggle to live in the days now. We really need this, not just for us, but for everybody. And, you know, once again, you know, we're in 100% of support of this project because of the opportunities it can create, not only for us, but for everybody else. Plus the environmental stuff. If you took a look at the project and the backgrounding of this project, you'd understand what I do. And I just really want to thank everybody for allowing me to get up and speak on behalf of my nation.
Good. Thank you. Giving us a bit of a historical perspective and the importance of this for the present day communities there. So, thank you. Director Stobart, did you have anything to add?
Oh, no. I just want to say thanks for it.
Thank you. Just curious, this is fairly removed from Mission and the other urban areas, the lower Fraser Valley. Just curious who you thought might be interested in living here. What type of a community would you direct this towards?
The housing needs study that was completed for FVRD, it identifies It is popular with people maybe downsizing, moving here, but it appears that there's a demand in the area too from the local employers. Sandpiper Golf Course is an example of people, they've tried to hire people there. They love the area, they want to move here, but they can't even find rental accommodation. Patrick and Ben have outreach to the local tourist associations, Harrison Hot Springs. I think even Mission Chamber of Commerce, there's support from them. I think we have letters from them. I didn't bring them today, but there's support from those employment representatives that they find a struggle getting staff out here because of the lack of rental accommodation. And then also for the people as they move up in positions, even trying to buy something is a struggle nowadays. So I think I answered the question.
Yeah, no, it's,
Yeah.
I certainly, pardon me?
Yeah, I think that's that. Anyways, I'll stop now. And
Yeah, no, I've always been so impressed with the outdoor assets in that area of the valley. I can understand why people would want to live there.
Yeah.
So, good. Any other discussion or questions from directors? Director Bales.
What kind of class septic would you do?
the wastewater treatment plant is proposed to be a Class A with, so take it to a tertiary level plus disinfection and removal of phosphates. So it's the highest level that you can do under any regulations that I'm aware of, including in the United States. I think that the key here is phosphate removal is expensive, but we've committed to do that. And then we've also the disinfection. So basically you almost got drinking water by the time you're done.
Okay, good. I'm expecting that some of those homes around Lake Erock were put in a long time ago when standards might not have been quite as high.
Yeah, I think there's history in those type of communities all across Canada and especially British Columbia. And opportunities to modernize it is probably a good idea as, you know, the more and more people build big homes out there. So they will have access to our rapid infiltration basins. That's what we're able to provide for this project by doing this project, because they probably have room for a wastewater treatment plant because they've got room for a well and other things there. But what they don't have is somewhere to dispose of the wastewater. And the study completed for FVRD by Urban Systems identified the proposal that we have as the option one in their report that was completed. I can't remember the date of the report, but we have a copy of it and we've read it. Sure.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Baker. Any other discussion? Director Angar, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the presentation and appreciate knowing all about it. I had to step away for a brief phone call. My apologies during the beginning of the meeting, the beginning of the presentation. So if I missed this, please forgive me, but I'm wondering what the timeline is for completion and where you're going next with the entire proposal. Thank you.
You're speaking of the timeline of the application.
Yes, and when do you hope to sort of start breaking ground and building materials started?
Sure, I understand the question. So we are ready to submit our application. We probably have it in here in July, and I suspect that it would take quite a few months for your staff to bring it to your board for first reading. Once we go through public hearing and get the approval in principle, then we would start in earnest in all the approvals that are necessary. There's some pretty complicated approvals that I don't think are going to happen overnight. These are going to take a year or two. We don't have any significant environmental approvals, but we have the wastewater treatment plant and the well system with the province, and both of those are fairly extensive. So I would suspect that we're probably minimum 2 years away before we're able to start construction, is my guess at this point in time.
Very good. Thanks for that.
Good. Thank you, Director Angar. Not seeing any other directors with questions, so we will thank Mr. Baker and the whole team that came out today to present to us, and especially thank you to representation from Scowlitz. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think Patrick, our public outreach person, was wondering if he could say a few words. Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to add to some of Andrew's question or comments to one of the questions that was raised regarding the community infrastructure that would be made available specifically to the Lake Erie community. One of the things that we uncovered in our community engagement, some of our public meetings and then our one-on-one meetings, was that there is a growing desire amongst the inhabitants around the lake to be able to have an option to connect to a municipal type sewer system sooner rather than later. So I think the earlier on we heard that there might be some concern there around extra costs and so forth. But one of the trends and one of the I would say the themes that we uncovered was that there's a desire to do that sooner rather than later, which I think bodes well for some of the comments that Councillor Joey Chapman made around wanting to see that lake cleaned up from their historical perspective. So I just wanted to leave that comment here as well. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Giesbrecht.
Thanks very much.
Yep, thank you again. Good. We'll turn things back to our CEO.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. So item 4.2 is the consolidated zoning bylaw and a staff presentation by Graham Danilus.
Nice to see Mr. Downs.
There we go. Good to see you, Chair Dickey and DA directors. You may have expected to see Haseeb Nadvi's face this afternoon making this presentation. Mr. Nadvi's on vacation and I'm stepping in on his behalf, and happily, I might add. I'd like to chat with you for a few minutes this afternoon about our consolidated zoning bylaw and a couple of steps that we need to take. We suggest we need to take in conjunction with the adoption of a consolidated zoning bylaw. Chat with you briefly today about an OCP amendment that would support the adoption of the consolidated zoning bylaw and how we propose to treat in-stream zoning amendments. So of course, the first step is the consolidated zoning bylaw, and I won't speak too much about the nature of the consolidated zoning bylaw today because it's a project that's been going on for a long time, and I think EA directors have a very good sense for it. But you'll know that the intent is to consolidate 9 separate zoning bylaws, and the zoning bylaws were adopted between the mid-70s and the early 90s. We have 9 of them. And the intent is to consolidate them into a single user-friendly zoning bylaw, easy to use, approachable for people, a single bylaw, without significantly changing the kinds of regulations that affect properties now. But there are a couple of steps that we need to consider to get us to a position of being able to adopt that consolidated zoning bylaw, which is, we're getting pretty close. As you know, in the consolidated zoning bylaw, it's got second reading. We've had a public hearing. We'll bring it forward for a new second reading because we've made some changes to it, and then a new public hearing in August or September. And after that, in the view of staff, it would be ready for consideration of adoption. But to get there, we need to think of a couple of things as well. One of which is a community plan, amendments to our community plans. The Local Government Act requires that changes that are, once a community plan is adopted, any changes we make to a zoning bylaw after that community plan is adopted, those changes need to be consistent with the community plan. And that's one way that community plans are implemented, activated, you might say. So we know that all of our zoning bylaws, every one of them predates the adoption of the community plan for the respective areas, and that some inconsistencies between our existing zoning bylaws and our community plans are inevitable. It's also the case that the consolidated zoning won't increase the extent of these inconsistencies because, as I've just said, The idea is to consolidate our zoning bylaws into one without significantly changing the regulations in the zoning bylaws and in the individual zones. So what staff are suggesting is that the board consider an amendment to all of our community plans to insert a policy statement into each one. And that policy statement would identify the intention of the board to consolidate our zoning bylaws. And it would recognize that there will inevitably be some level of inconsistency between that consolidated zoning bylaw and our 9 official community plans. And in effect, adding this policy to our community plans would make the adoption of a zoning bylaw, a consolidated zoning bylaw, consistent with those plans. Those plans would provide for that adoption of that consolidated zoning bylaw, if you will. And a major benefit of doing this is that we would eliminate any legal risk associated with that Local Government Act requirement that changes to zoning be consistent with community plans. But of course, any future amendments we would make to the consolidated zoning bylaw once it's adopted, all of those amendments would have to be consistent with community plans. So we don't lose out on that implementation of community plans. The other thing we need to think about is applications that are currently on the go, in-stream applications. When the board considers adopting that consolidated zoning bylaw, those 9 existing zoning bylaws that we have, those will be repealed. They will cease to have any force and effect. And that means that the 14 zoning amendments that we currently have on the go, they're going to be affected because those applications propose to amend one of those existing zoning bylaws. When we adopt a consolidated zoning, those old zoning bylaws will cease to be. And that means that we'll need to redraft our in-stream applications under the new consolidated zoning bylaw when it's adopted. Follow me so far? So our objectives with regards to these in-stream applications is that we don't want to add delay for applicants. We want to, in every place we can, we want to avoid any significant delay to them. We want to make sure that those in-stream applications that are on the go, that they're not set back, that they're very quickly brought to the same stage they are currently at, whether they're at first reading or second, and so on. And we also propose that we avoid redoing public consultations. And that means that where we've got an in-stream zoning amendment application and we've already held a public hearing, we propose that we don't hold further public hearings. And I'll get to that in a little more detail in a moment. So working through how to handle these in-stream zoning amendment applications, and we've identified 4 categories. The one category is applications where we haven't gotten to a public hearing yet. So they either haven't got first reading or they've just got first reading, but they've not been to a public hearing. So that's category A. Category B, we've got applications that have already had a public hearing. Category C, new applications, haven't gone anywhere yet, just brand new applications. And then a 4th kind of catch-all, special considerations. There's only one application really in that category, which I'll get to. So with this first category A, these applications where the application has not yet been to a public hearing, we're going to simply hold those and we'll bring them forward once the consolidated zoning is adopted. And we'll make sure that if those bylaws, those in-stream applications, if they've got first reading, we'll redraft that first reading bylaw and so make it applicable to the consolidated zoning, and we'll bring them forward. And our intent is to bring them forward on at the same meeting that the consolidated zoning is adopted, so that there's absolutely the delays are kept to an absolute minimum on those files. Second category of in-stream applications are these applications that they've already had a public hearing. And some of them have already received third reading. And so that means that the proponents are working out technical details, satisfying MOTI for a subdivision, for example, registering covenants, doing the kinds of things that applicants, developers do between receiving third reading and coming forward for final adoption. So with this category of applications, we propose that we would bring them back to the board for new readings under the consolidated zoning bylaw. We would be recommending to the board that we waive a public hearing because one's already been held for these applications. And the applications are not changing, and the details of the zone that they would be zoning to will not be changing. And so the public's already seen all the details, and we've had public hearing reports, and that's been considered. And so we would be bringing forward these applications for 3 readings, waiving of public hearing. Making sense? So, okay. Any new applications, that's our 3rd category. Any new applications we receive, we would propose, we'll just hold them. We won't bring them forward for first reading until the zoning bylaws, consolidated zoning is adopted. And that way we, of course, if we did bring applications forward for first reading between now and the adoption of the consolidated zoning, we would have to bring them forward again after the adoption of the consolidated zoning bylaw for a new first reading. So we're proposing not to take that additional step and just to hold off. And the final category of applications are those that I think need a little bit of special consideration. And it really is only one application. It's for Sleepy Hollow Road in Area H. And that's a case where we've got a community plan amendment and a zoning amendment, both at 3rd reading. The adoption of the zoning is delayed pending the construction of a community sanitary sewer system. And so that's going to take some time yet. What we propose to do is bring the OCP amendment forward for adoption in September. And that way, once the consolidated zoning bylaw is adopted, we can reread the zoning amendment for the Sleepy Hollow project and waive public hearing and return the project to its current status, which is a zoning amendment with 3 readings waiting for adoption. In other words, the community plan amendment would proceed separate from the zoning amendment for this particular project on Sleepy Hollow, and that enables us to waive the public hearing requirement once we bring the new zoning amendment bylaw back after the consolidated zoning is adopted. Hopefully, I appreciate that what I'm describing to you has multiple steps and has zoning bylaws and consolidated zoning bylaws and OCP amendment bylaws, and I think it can be rather confusing from that perspective. But what you can be confident in is that we're looking at our in-stream applications carefully and charting the best path forward for those applications, and so they don't suffer as we move away from our 9 existing zoning bylaws and adopt a new consolidated bylaw. As I mentioned, the zoning bylaw, the consolidated zoning's at 2nd. We plan to bring it forward for a 2nd public hearing in August or early September. That makes it available for 3rd reading in September and adoption in October. And that's the timeline that we'll be working very hard to stick to. We very much want to bring that bylaw forward so that you could consider it for adoption in October. The Omnibus OCP amendment bylaw, that's the bylaw that would insert a policy into every OCP that supports the consolidated zoning. That will be on the agenda this month at the board meeting for a first reading. We'll hold a public hearing on those OCP amendments at the same time we hold a 2nd public hearing on the consolidated zoning bylaw, and we'll bring them forward together thereafter. So the idea is that we'll be in a very good position at the October board meeting to adopt the consolidated zoning and catch up many of those in-stream applications to so they're not losing ground. I just talked about the timing a little bit about what's next. August to September, public hearings on the consolidated zoning and bringing forward those bylaws for your consideration of 3rd and adoption in September and October. I appreciate having a few minutes of your time this afternoon to go over what I think ends up being a slightly complicated, and that there are a number of moving parts that all have to come together in the right sequence and the right time to enable the board to consider adopting this consolidated zoning, a 10-year project coming forward for adoption in October of this year. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Danilus, laying out the mechanics of how this is all going to work to get us to where we need to be with the consolidated zoning bylaw. So directors, any discussion? Director Angar.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Danilus. As always, I'm blown away by your capacity to handle to juggle so many balls in the air at one time. Certainly not an easy task. And just from my point of view, the easiest way forward for myself is to really keep it simple. And the question I would always ask is this bylaw change, is it going to affect anybody on the ground differently? And it seems to be, on the surface anyway, to my understanding so far, that there are no real changes or dramatic changes. So for a simpleton like myself, that's the question I would ask, and hopefully that can be answered as you proceed along the path of making the changes. And thanks again for all your work. I certainly would not want to be in your shoes to manage all those juggling balls. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Angar. I see Director Davidson has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Through to you, Mr. Danilus. Noting that it looks like approximate, 3 months until we see adoption of the OCP omnibus and consolidated zoning. For that category of zoning applications that are already past public hearing and third reading, are there any of those that are going to incur delays while we wait for the omnibus and the consolidated zoning to go through that might otherwise be able to proceed if they were, for example, adopted under the existing zoning bylaws?
Thank you, Director Davidson. That's a great question, and one that we asked ourselves as well. We do have a zoning amendment application that is ready to move forward. It's a 3-lot. It's a zoning amendment to facilitate a 3-lot subdivision in Popcom, and that's one that will move forward. And we've incorporated the changes into the consolidated zoning bylaw, and so that zoning amendment can move forward as it's currently drafted. It can get adopted under the existing zoning bylaws, and we roll that into the consolidated zoning bylaw, so nothing's lost in the process. And that was the only one application out of the 14 that would face losing serious ground over the next 3 months if we didn't act on it.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Thank you, Mr. Danilus. Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, we will move on in our agenda. Thanks again, Mr. Danilus.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. So moving to item 5.1, we have the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of June 9th, 2022. There's a motion for your consideration.
For motion, Director Dixon, second, Director Stobart. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Item 6.1 is a zoning amendment bylaw number 1649 for a 33-lot residential subdivision at 52425 Yale Road in Electoral Area D.
Okay, we've got a staff recommendation, looking for a motion. Move Director Stobart, second Director Johnson. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
6.2 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Omnibus Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1668.
Now that we've been educated, looking for a motion. Move Director Dixon, second Director Johnson. Discussion. Hearing
Davidson?
none. Go ahead, Director Davidson.
Bear with me 1 sec. I'm just trying to bring up the actual bylaw. I had a question about the content of a paragraph in Schedule A. So I'm getting some feedback on this line. I don't know what's happening there, but anyway, about 2/3 of the way down on the paragraph, it on Schedule A for the consolidated zoning bylaw, it has a line there. It says, for certainty, these accommodations are limited to the consolidated zoning bylaw project. And I'm used to seeing these kinds of documents reference, legislation or other artifacts, but I'm not aware of a artifact called the consolidated zoning bylaw project that could be referenced by a bylaw. So I was just wondering about the wording of that. Is that going to pass legal muster if it's ever challenged? And I'm just wondering if staff could comment on that. 'Cause I don't think of a project as being a document or a bylaw or a law. It's an activity essentially. So it's my project management hat wearing right now. But could staff comment on that?
Mr. Daniels, if you'd like.
Thank you, through you, Chair Dickey. This rather tortured paragraph, which will be the policy that's inserted into all the community plans, was drafted with by our solicitors. We've had considerable legal support on it. It's I think if it were written by staff, it'd be rather shorter. But the point of that statement, for certainty, these accommodations are limited to this particular project, is to say that in the future, when the consolidated zoning bylaw is amended, that all those future amendments need to be consistent with community plans, and that the board is in a sense accepting that the consolidated zoning bylaw wouldn't be entirely consistent with all 9 community plans. And it's making that trade-off because the consolidated zoning bylaw brings a host of benefits. It simplifies the zoning regulations. It consolidates 9 into 1. It's going to be better for everybody and clearer and simpler. And that's a significant benefit that the board through this policy is trading off against that requirement that changes in zoning are consistent with community plans. So that statement is meant to limit the application of this policy only to the initial adoption of the consolidated zoning bylaw. I don't have a concern personally about the language used about the consolidated zoning bylaw project. I think that's acceptable and doesn't put us on any kind of disadvantaged footing.
Thank you. I was going to say that, yeah, it's just the word of the use of the word project in a document of this nature, which has thrown me. But if it's had legal review, I'm well satisfied. So thank you. I'm good.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.1 is the 2022 Community Forest Grant applications for Electoral Area B.
Okay, Mr. Director Adamson isn't present, so move Director Stobart, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
7.2 is the 2022 Grant and Aid for River Monsters Swim Club in Electoral Area B.
For a motion, move Director Bales, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.3, 2022 Grant and Aid request for Spuzzum First Nation Electoral Area B.
For a motion, move Director Johnson, second Director Bales. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.4, a 2022 Grant and Aid request for Sunshine Valley Volunteer Fire Department Electoral Area B.
Looking for a motion, move Director Bales, second Director Angar. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.5, we have a Grant and Aid request for the Actively Creating an Exceptional Society in Electoral Area C.
Move Director Bales, second Director Stobart. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.6 is a 2022 Grant and Aid request for the Post Creek Ratepayers Association in Electoral Area E.
Looking for a motion, move Director Angar, second Director Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
7.7, 2022 Grant and Aid request for the Chilliwack Area Lions Clubs in Electoral Area H.
Director Stobart.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recuse myself from this. I'm the secretary of the organizing committee for the Derby.
Okay, thank you, Director Stobart. Just allow you to excuse yourself. So we need a motion. Move Director Dixon, second Director Bales. Any discussion? Go ahead, Director Dixon.
I'm just really happy to be able to support this. It has come and gone. It was a great event for Cultus Lake area. Keep that lake healthy.
Good news. Good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
If we could just get staff to ask Director Stobart to come back. Thank you. 7.8 is a 2022 grant and aid request for the Columbia Valley Volunteer Fire Department Association, Electoral Area H.
Looking for a motion. Director Dixon moves, second Director Bales. Discussion. Director Stobart's light is on, but I am, thank you. No discussion. All those in favor, contrary, motion carries.
7.9 is a 2022 grant and aid for the Cultus Lake Volunteer Fire Department, Electoral Area H.
Move Director Dixon, second Director Stobart. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
8.1, we have the Harrison Mills Neighborhood Plan Progress Update for July 2022. This is an information item, but I'm certain staff would be happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion on the neighborhood plan? Hearing none, we will move forward.
8.2 is the Rogers Telecommunications Facility at 55601 Kiefers Road in Electoral Area A.
Boston Bar. Needing a motion. Move Director Johnson. Second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
8.3 is modified 2 homes on 1 lot covenant to allow for personal care use at 1401 Maple Rock Drive in Electoral Area H.
For a motion, move Director Dixon, second Director Bales. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
8.4 is processing of in-stream OCP and zoning amendment applications under the Fraser Valley Regional District Consolidated Zoning Bylaw number 1638.
Okay, motion. Move Director Davidson, second Director Angar. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries.
9.1.1 is an information item. It's the Fire Smart Critical Infrastructure Assessments. Happy to answer any questions on that item.
Good. Any discussion? Director Angar.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering where we're at with the home assessments. I know we've completed the Bell Acres, Celeste Park, and the Post Creek neighborhood assessments, and I'm wondering how it's looking for the actual homes themselves. If Andrew Schellenberg is available, he may have that stat. If not, no worries. I can get it from him personally.
Actually, Chair Dickey, if we could have Stacy Barker, our Director of Regional Services, I'm sure she would be happy to answer the question.
Okay.
Very good.
Ms. Barker.
Thank you. Yeah, the home assessments are going very well and they're starting to pick up more. We're starting to get more inquiries when people see us out there in the field and you know, when they're talking to their neighbors. So far in total, we have done 27 home ignition zone assessments. So I think we're just getting started and hopefully we'll hear more. I believe that Mr. Schellenberg had sent out some information to all the directors about helping to get the word out to their communities so that we can get some more information, some more uptake in this particular program. As well, we are offering a rebate program where residents can receive $500 back for working to comply with some of the recommendations for their assessment on the first $1,000 spent. So we issued them a $500 check if they spend $1,000. And so far, we've only had one person who's taken this up, but we're hoping to build on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Barker. I'm wondering a follow-up if I may, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just wondering how long do people have, question of my own as well as others, how long do people have to act on that $500 rebate? Typically initiating a project these days is challenging simply because trades are so backed up and are not hungry and eager. So it's challenging to get a trade to come and do something around the home, and it may take even the homeowner to do some, so it may take them some time to do a project. So what does it look like timeline?
Thank you for that question. So the rebates are linked to the grant that we received, our 2022 grant. And I believe they have until early fall, but I will confirm that and we can make sure that that information gets out to residents, but they still have some time yet.
So if one applies then to, let's say you haven't quite finished, but you're in process, is it a good idea to make mention that you're proceeding, or is it, it has to be completed by such and such a date? Is that how it will work?
So I will get the details in terms of when the application deadline would be. And I think there would probably be some grace from funders, from people who had started the application process, but I'm sure we could work it out for people who are certainly in the middle of doing something, because that's what we want them to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks so much.
Good. Thank you, Director Angar. And thank you, Mr. Schellenberg, for all the work you've done on this project. Any other discussion? That was information
Davidson?
only. Oh, go ahead, Director Davidson.
So yeah, thank you. Through to Ms. Barker again. Yeah, Mr. Schellenberg had sent out the neighborhood assessments for McConnell Creek and Duryea, and I pushed them out on my email distribution list along with a reminder to people that there were free home assessments available. But the language on the website, like anything, reminds us that it's limited to budget. And the same would apply for the assessments, I'm assuming. Sorry, for the rebates, I'm assuming. So can you shed any information on, essentially how many assessments per year, or is it just like a one-time thing that are covered? And the same thing for the rebates. I'm guessing the rebates would be a one-time thing, but the assessments might be funded year over year, as long as it comes through an operational budget. Just trying to get an idea as to how many of these are we good for in any given year.
Thank you. In terms of the individual residents having a home ignition assessment, there is no cost to that other than us having a Fire Smart coordinator employed who can do that work. So that's something that we need to talk about, looking forward in budgeting for 2023. That individual has to be available for that. In terms of the neighborhood assessments, we have already met the maximum grant that we can do, to the maximum grant level that we can do in 2022, but that is something that we would be applying for the next grant to do more of those neighborhood assessments in 2023.
But for the rebates, I take it that's just a one-time 2022 thing, or is that another reapplication for monies to fund a rebate program going forward? I'm just curious how that would work.
So how these grants work is that the funds that we don't use, we have to return. So we would have to reapply. I believe that we're a long way from using up the existing funding, but I can get an accounting of that for you and the details after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. So, Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I too am trying to get this information out to the Area H residents, especially the ones that in the areas, in the neighborhoods they've done the assessments. My question is just really, will these be on the website, or is that a possible place where they could be?
Sorry, could the neighborhood assessments be on the website? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
That's a good question, actually, and it's something I'd like to talk to actually Jamie Vaness, who is our privacy head of privacy, to understand how that would work in terms of putting that information, making it public. So I'm going to have some further conversations to understand that, possibly, but I don't know yet. We did share them, with neighborhood champions, with neighborhood organizations, but we have not put it on our website.
May I follow up? But if I send them out in my email, I guess I'm just asking, is that an issue as well for privacy? I haven't done that yet. That's on my list tonight.
I already have done it.
I would report back on that issue. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Okay, and we will move forward.
9.1.2 is the Poplar Fire Department apparatus replacement. There is a motion for your consideration.
Okay, motion Director Stobart, second Director Bales. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, contrary motion carries.
Moving down to item 12, which is reports by electoral area directors.
Okay, start with Director Angar.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'll have to think about this. Oh, I know we've got, can everybody hear me okay? I seem to be getting some feedback as well.
Everything's fine on our end.
Thank you. The Tourism Chilliwack has come forth and helped our stewardship committee out tremendously lately with a couple of with ongoing funding for some actual latrines in the valley, which is a novel thing that should have been done years and years ago, but in great demand and already being used tremendously. So good on them for making that happen. And my thanks to all the stewardship committee for their work for initiating that project. The other thing, let's see, a couple of other local things that don't really pertain, but oh yeah, I mentioned this morning that we have a fire ban coming up again. Category 2 and Category 3 fires coming this Friday are going to be banned by the BC Wildfire Service. So good idea to get the word out that only small campfires are going to be still allowed. And that's about it, all that comes to mind at this time. If anything comes up, I'll let you know after everybody else talks. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Director Angar. We'll move to Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a little bit busy this last little while, but some great things happening. I attended the Pike Meadow Derby, and huge thanks to the Lions Club that helped get that organized. And I know there was lots of happy faces around and lots of fish caught, and all of it was making a difference to keep our lake healthy. So thank you, Director Stobart, to you and your Lions team. And I heard they had great prizes, which really went a long way to keeping people happy as well. Cultus Lake Day was jam-packed. It was a full day with pancake breakfast, parades, games for the kids, games for the adults, and just all kinds of things to do. So it was just really nice to see people out and about and enjoying some just time out at the lake. I attended Columbia Valley Day or Canada Day at Columbia Valley. And again, we have a new team sort of done some of the organizing, and it was very, very well attended, as well as just a lot of fun. So I had a lot of feedback around that. And we have new shirts for Columbia Valley, which is a local artist made a new design. So it's great to see the community building there. I've been meeting with our emergency planning committee around just being prepared. And so that information will be going out to the residents in Area H this week. Just some suggestions. A lot of it really is directing people back to the emergency section on the FVRD website, which has great information. And I wasn't about to print out the 90-page Be Prepared booklet, but there's a lot of really good information in there. So we're just trying to make people aware, and how that goes. Just ongoing, we've got some pylons up, the orange delineators up on the Lake Road, and that's making a difference, really just helping people, I guess, respect the area so that emergency vehicles can get through and we can all stay safe. That's it for now. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Stobart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much to report. Like everybody else that lives along the Fraser, everybody was happy to see the river subside a little and not quite reach 6 meters, especially our farmers who were starting to see a fair bit of seepage in the fields, and so the crop damage will be kept to minimum this year. Not much else, I guess. For those that are into it, their tennis court in Desroches will have pickleball lines hopefully by tomorrow. You won't find me on the court, but I'm sure many people are going to take part in it. So fly at it.
That's great. Thank you, Director Stobart. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I was invited by Spasm First Nations to attend their 1926 Alexander Bridge Rehabilitation Project Work Celebration event this morning. So that's why I was a little late getting to this meeting. I did hustle. And I have sent Andrew's information to our community through the Boston Bar Facebook page and also through our update. It's a little local paper that we put out once a month. There was a fire north of us, north of Boston Bar on Monday. I heard that they had stopped a train, so I'm not sure, but it would seem that perhaps it was on the tracks. I actually neglected now to follow up and see. When I did look, it was undetermined, the cause, but I can honestly say it caused a fair bit of anxiety in our community, understandably so after Lytton. But our volunteer fire department quickly had it under control, and they certainly do a good job. They're very dedicated and really pleased with the people we have on board. A standing dead tree was finally removed, something Terry had started last year, I believe, and I followed up on and finally got some action there. There's still repairs needed that have been started along the Trans-Canada in the Spuzum area, Alexander Lodge and Hell's Gate, but it is not completed, and I have some emails out to see what the plan is there. Yeah, I guess just a few ongoing housekeeping items that I stay on top of. Thank
Great.
you.
Good. Thank you, Director Johnson. Director Bales.
Pretty good for Area C. Glad the flood waters have receded a bit. And that's it.
Good. Thank you, Director Bales. Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. Pretty quiet. We have a community meet and greet scheduled at McConnell Hall for this Sunday. Other than that, a lot of much needed road repair slowly happening. A few fewer potholes than there were a couple of months ago, but still many to get addressed. But it's a process. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Director Davidson. And I have nothing to report from Area D. So I'll turn things back to our CAO.
Thank you. So item 13 is public question period for items relevant to the agenda. We'll just turn things over to our corporate officer, Jamie Van Ness.
So we do have two members of the public with us. I don't know if anybody has any questions relevant to the agenda for today. No, it would appear not. We don't have anybody online with us today, and we have not received any questions by email.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Van Ness. And that would bring us to adjournment.
That brings us to adjournment, Mr. Chair.
For a motion, move Director Dixon, second Director Bales. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, contrary, motion carries. Thank you, staff.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you, directors. Oh, I hope that was worthwhile, Diane.